Hi everyone, I am Jen Pike, your host of SimplicityTV, and this is your weekly episode of Cut the BS Wednesdays. One question I am asked from parents all the time, especially the main cook in the house, is how do you create delicious, nutritious meals that are quick and easy to do? So today I'm preparing for you guys one of my favorite soups that is in my book, The Simplicity Project, and it is a cashew carrot soup. It is delicious, it is fragrant. If you could smell the kitchen right now, you would be drooling. And I'm gonna take you through step by step just how we do this. So very simple ingredients. If you have a copy of the book, on the second edition, it is page 137 in your book. We're using carrots, about a pound of carrots. We're using raw unsalted cashews. We're using a little bit of avocado oil, some thyme, some sage, coconut milk for that rich, creamy, delicious texture and flavoring and healthy fat to our soup. We're using an organic broth, so if you make your own, fantastic. I've opted in for a organic version that is in a Tetra box. We've got onions and garlic and a bit of sea salt and pepper, and we're gonna bring this all together in a one pot dish. So I've already steamed up my carrots that I have sitting behind me on the stove. They've been drained, they're ready to go. In the pot, I've got my onions and my garlic that's already sauteing. So we'll head on over. So you can see that our onions and garlic, they've started to caramelize. They've got the brown bits on them. You want to see this, and the key to getting this and not burning your onions and your garlic is you've got to do a low heat, a really low heat. You got to be patient. It's probably going to take a good, I'd say 6 to 10 minutes before you get it to this consistency, this color, and this aroma that you're looking for. But this is now ready. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to add the carrots in. And we're gonna do this whole entire thing in one pot. So I steamed the carrots in here, then I removed them and I put them into the glass dish. Then I sauteed my onions and my garlic in here. So we're gonna mix that through and all around. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add in my broth. So I've got my organic broth. I'm gonna put all 946 milliliters, the entire container in. Okay, so we're just gonna let this go all the way in. Now, if you don't have vegetable broth at home and say you have chicken broth or you have beef broth, you could use it. Just try to make sure that it is organic. We're almost at the end there. All right. And then we're just gonna give this a quick stir. Now, this is where you get some time back in your day because this is gonna sit for about 15 to 30 minutes on a low simmer. So we're gonna turn this up just a tiny little bit more. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put the lid on. That'll help to accelerate it for us. And we're gonna come back to this soup in about 15 to 30 minutes and take it to the next step. So while our soup is working on its really yummy smelling simmer, I've come back over and what I've done is I've put a cup and a quarter, maybe a touch more than a cup and a quarter of raw cashews into my food processor. If you don't have a food processor, you can use a blender for this, but you're gonna have to do it in small batches, otherwise it's gonna get stuck and you're gonna start to create a cashew butter. So we're gonna pop the lid on. Now you wanna puree these. So you're breaking these cashews down so they're like a fine, crumbly dust. And what you want to do is in between check to see that you don't have any lumps. And if you start to see it collecting around the base, you want to go in and just break that up because eventually what we're going to do is once our soup is fully simmered and we use the immersion blender, a handheld blender, to get in there and to puree it, we're going to add it in with the cashew and it's going to make almost like a butter-like texture consistency, and then we're going to add it all back into the pot. So I'm going to give this just about another quick 6 to 10 second pulse. And that's perfect. Now my cashews can sit and are ready and willing when my soup is ready to add it all in and then take it to the next step and stage. All right, so our soup is done simmering now. So now the next step that we need to do is take our can of organic coconut milk, which we're gonna open up, and you're gonna use the entire can in this recipe. So try to buy organic. You cannot substitute, if you realize you don't have a can of coconut milk, you can't use your coconut milk that's in a Tetra box in the fridge instead. It's not gonna be thick enough. And remember, we are trying to get this really rich, creamy, decadent soup out of this recipe. So you need to have the thickness, and really what I'd love for you to do, and don't freak out about this, but I'd love for you to have the full fat version, okay? So we're gonna go and take that and put it on over. And be very careful anytime that you are putting extra ingredients into something that's already hot, that they don't splash up on you. Okay, so you want to get the full amount of that in. And then you can just mix and stir this in. When you do this, you're gonna see that really pretty creamy color come through, so it is not as bright orange as it once was. All right, so we've got that in. Now, the next part, which is the really fun part, is now you get to use your immersion blender. So we're gonna come on over to the stove and see how we're actually gonna do that. I'm not kidding you here, you need to have your pot lid like you're Captain America to shield yourself, because if you pull this blender up, you are going to coat your kitchen with this recipe and your clothes. So the key is you want to have it in, okay, and you want to start to move it around. So be very careful when it is that you're doing that. So you're trying to get it rich and creamy. If there is little pieces left in there, don't even worry about it. If you can spend the extra time, but the key is when you're doing this, it works like a suction, this immersion on the end of or the bottom of your pot. So you've got to lift it a little bit, kind of put it on an angle, even pulse it instead of don't push down really hard. It's gonna feel like a vacuum pulling those vegetables and those onions and garlic underneath. So take your time. Now, what you need to do for the next step is we need to take a half a cup of this soup, and we're gonna take it over to our food processor with our already pureed cashews. Here, we're gonna get crafty. I'm gonna scoop the half cup in. Then, watch this. Haha, we're gonna use that. You wanna make sure that the lid on your food processor is on securely. And that's actually one of the nice things about working with a food processor is it has that built-in safety mechanism where it actually won't even start until you have it on. All right, so you're gonna pop your lid on. You wanna hear that, so it has locked in. And now we're gonna press on. And what you can see in the bottom here is you wanna get this to form like a creamy, rich butter. We're not trying to create a liquidy mess here in your food processor. You want it to be thick. So we're gonna do this probably for about another 6 to 10 second pulse. And then pop your lid off. Okay, take a peek in, make sure you've got that good consistency, and this is what we're looking for, okay? You wanna have that thickness, all right? And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this and transfer it over to our pot. So you've gotta take the whole base off with you. And so what you wanna do is now you're just gonna spoon this in carefully. You are not gonna dump this in, or again, your soup is gonna splash all over you. So I just put it in down at the edge instead of dropping it directly into the center. So you're gonna take this whole entire mixture. So you can see here how, look at all of the incredible, not just protein, but fat, magnesium, vitamin E, selenium, your trace minerals that you are getting in here. This is not like you've taken some cashew substitute. You're gonna get all the same nutrients that were in those nuts in that raw state right in here. Now, if you don't have cashews at home, can you use another nut? You could. I'm gonna say that cashews are gonna be the preferred source for the main reason that they don't have skin on them, so they're nice and creamy and make the recipe far more successful. All right, so I'm gonna use the spoon instead of the immersion blender to initially work this in, because if I go for the immersion blender right now, all my cashew butter is sitting in one spot in the pot, right? And you can start to see that there is still some lumpies in there. So now, grab your Captain America shield again, okay? Because this is now a thicker mess. You're gonna pick it on up, put your blender back in. All right, now what we're gonna do is I'm gonna grab those herbs that we're gonna add in. So we've got our thyme leaves going in, about 1/4 teaspoon. But honestly, when it comes to ingredients, I mean, don't be heavy-handed on it, but I love having more herbs, both fresh and not, that recipes call for. So I tend to go a little bit heavier. I always say this in person and in what I write. It was very challenging for me in some regards to do a cookbook type feeling inside the book, because I don't do a lot of very strict measurements. Not a lot at all. So this one for the sage, we'll pour out into the hand and put it in that way. And then for your sea salt, again, same thing. Just grind a bunch up into it. Put your fresh ground black pepper in there. And then not with your blender, but with your spoon this time, so we can get the blender out of the way. You're just gonna stir that all in. Now you could add some fresh herbs in here. You could do some basil. You could do a bay leaf in here, a couple of them. And then what we're gonna do now is we're gonna close this off with the lid and we're gonna keep it on our low heat simmer. We're gonna set the timer for about 5 to 10 minutes, so let's say 7. And in 7 minutes, we're gonna enjoy that soup. All right, so I have taken the soup, which has been fully immersed from the blender and is creamy and rich, and I can't even describe how incredible this smells. So we've got it ready over here. So now I'm actually going to serve it up into the bowl. Now I would recommend, and if you don't have it, you don't have to use it, but I'd recommend using white or using cream, something that's a lighter base, because this is such a pretty color that we're gonna put into it. So we are going to serve it on up. Don't worry if you spill down the side of the bowl. That's what there's paper towel for. Okay, and so maybe you're having your soup as a small side. Maybe it's gonna be your main dish. This is a really filling soup, so it is good enough to have as your main, or you could have it with a beautiful salad creation that you'll see in another video. So there it is, just on its own, really pretty. Now, I always love to add finishing touches. To me, it's like, you know, adding in whether it's nuts or seeds, which we don't need to do in this one, or some fresh greens, is like finding the perfect pair of earrings or necklace for that outfit. It just pulls everything together. So I've got some fresh rosemary and some fresh basil. And the rosemary, I'm gonna keep the size that it is. The basil, I'm gonna ribbon up a little bit. And I'm gonna do a little bit of fresh basil on the top here. And I've got my fresh rosemary. And there you go. That is your delicious, hearty, incredibly nourishing, incredibly balancing cashew carrot soup. This is a fan favorite for your guests and for your family. And at this time of year, when it's cooler outside and even on the warmer days, it is gonna warm you up from the inside out in the right way. More simplicity and more ease, not only in all that you do, but all that you consume. Have a fantastic rest of your day, everyone.